Want to shoot a bad guy in the face?
In the face! Not so complex! Need it! Want it!
Or see how long you can last against a horde of mutants or werewolves? Then check out today's video, where we talk about some of the greatest action and shooter games of all time that can be played on a Mac. From the depths of the ocean, to the Russian wilderness, to an alien planet. Each of those titles will present you with unique challenges to test your aim, reflexes, and the ability to adapt to hostile environments. So make sure your clip is full, and you've got a spare grenade or two, because there will be things to kill, starting with our first pick for this list. The Bioshock series is made up of 3 games, celebrated for their unique atmosphere, world building, and mature story. The first and the third games are both considered among the best ever made. We put the series here as a single entity, but we'll quickly go over the individual games. For example, if you just want to play one game and not the entire series. The first game is set in the 1960s and takes you to Rapture, a dilapidated yet majestic underworld city, whose citizens went insane because of genetically modifying themselves too much in the pursuit of physical and mental perfection. It puts a steampunk twist on the 60s aesthetic and adds a mild horror undertone for a creepier end result. The environments show incredible attention to detail, making the storytelling in Bioshock 1 a prime example of the age-old advice, show, don't tell. Starting the game, you as the player are given no context on why you go to Rapture, but as you fight against Rapture's mutated citizens, through the gloomy corridors and derelict halls, you start piecing together a shockingly clever story that eventually changes your whole perspective of the game. The gameplay can be a bit lacklustering at times because of the overpowered enemies on higher difficulties, the lack of enemy variety, and the stiff movement, but the cool upgradable weapons and special powers mostly make up for those few shortcomings. Bioshock 2, on the other hand, takes place after the first game and uses the same setting, aesthetic, and gameplay, but some of the spark from the original seems to be lost. This is likely because the sequel is the only title in the trilogy that's done from a different studio. Not that the game is bad per se. Some even might say it offers better gameplay. Still, it's definitely 2 big steps back in terms of story, characters, and overall atmosphere, while being a step forward in gameplay. And then we come to Bioshock Infinite. It looks and feels quite different from the first 2, but it also brings back the charm that made the original a classic. Here, Rapture is replaced by a floating city named Columbia. The writing and atmosphere in the game are as good, if not better, than Bioshock 1, and the 2 DLC episodes called Burial at Sea tie the game back perfectly with the first 2. It retains the improvements from Bioshock 2 while polishing the gameplay further and introducing a companion character that spends most of the game with you.
Excuse me. The lady has some questions for you.
Yes, of course.
If you aren't sure which one of the games to try, I recommend starting off with the first one and then going straight to Infinite. Bioshock 2 is optional if you love the setting of Rapture and you want to return to it, in the heavy shoes of a different, more powerful character. The next pick on our list features 2 of the Borderlands games, Borderlands 2 and Borderlands the pre-sequel. We should also say that there's a Mac version of Borderlands 3 on the Epic Games Store, but since it's a pretty poorly optimized port, we can't really recommend it, and so we won't even talk about it in this video. Our main focus will be on Borderlands 2. Story-wise, the pre-sequel focuses on the events before Borderlands 2, and it adds a couple of new gameplay mechanics, new damage types, and character classes, but it's still pretty much the same. Both titles fall into the looter-shooter category, which combines fast-paced FPS action with an RPG open world and character progression. Often cited as the best looter-shooter of all time, Borderlands 2 is what happens when you have both style and substance in plenty amounts. Even if you've never played Borderlands 2, you will absolutely recognize its trademark comic book style graphics. They still look great even by today's standard, which is a testament to the game's art direction. But you aren't here to marvel at the art. You're here to vaporize, blow up, and shred some enemies with the baddest guns you can find. So let's talk about substance. The game's open world is filled with a decent variety of enemies that quickly ramp up in difficulty to keep the gameplay fresh and challenging, without ever feeling unfair and grindy. And then there are the guns, which are procedurally generated, so it's nearly impossible to get the same one twice, unless we're talking about the special legendary ones. Combine this with the option to choose between 4 unique characters with their own skill trees and playstyles, and the number of combinations to try is virtually limitless, giving the game insane replayability. And that's without taking into consideration the 40 plus DLCs, which you can get together with the 2 base games for under $30 with the Handsome Bundle Collection. If Borderlands 2 sounds like your type of thing, the Handsome Collection is a no-brainer, easily giving you upwards of 100 plus hours of content. An easy recommendation, especially if you have a friend or two willing to engage in some co-op action. If you like how this is going, don't forget to drop a like and click the subscribe button to keep those videos coming. Okay, bear with me on this one. Deus Ex Mankind Divided is a sequel to a prequel to 2 older Deus Ex games. Got that? It doesn't matter. Only Mankind Divided is supported on Mac, but it's still important to mention it because if you want to follow the whole story, you'll kind of feel like you're watching the second season of a series you've never even seen before. And the thing is, you should follow the story, because it's good or at least serious enough to explore putting machine parts in your body and how that affects the mind, conspiracies in an age of technological progress, and the class differences that arises then. As for the gameplay, the most important word here is interactivity. Mankind Divided uses branching dialogues, side missions, open hubs with secret ways to reach your objectives, and a lot of cool and interesting methods to go through the maps depending on how you level up your character. Like jumping on roofs, hacking doors, becoming invisible in front of your enemies, or crawling through vents. And a lot of the content is hidden and optional. This is easily among one of the most immersive games you'll find supported for Mac. It's actually an RPG with action elements, but even taken on their own, these elements are good enough to feature this game on this list. I mean, it says a lot that this game has more to offer, but if you just want to shoot a bunch of bad guys, you can still have a good time, because the weapons and abilities bring enough variety to make this game fun. Next, we have the Metro Trilogy, another series with heavy focus on story and atmosphere, but this time, the setting is a post-apocalyptic version of Russia in the near future. A nuclear war has made the surface uninhabitable, and the last remnants of humanity have retreated to the underground tunnels of Moscow. In all 3 games, you play as a young man determined to save his people from both the mutated monstrosities that roam the city's ruins, and from other fractions of human survivors. I guess even on the brink of extinction, damn it. I guess even on the brink of extinction, your fellow man is your greatest enemy. The first 2 games, Metro 2033 and Last Night, are very similar in terms of gameplay and atmosphere. Both primarily take place in the underground tunnels of Moscow and have a very linear gameplay, consisting of moving forwards and either shooting or sneaking by. The reason this type of linearity doesn't get dull is that the devs have nailed the oppressive, hope-starved atmosphere of the Metro universe. The tunnels are your world, and despite all the deformed and deadly abominations lurking inside them, they're still your best chance of survival. On the other hand, the third game in the series, Exodus, trades the closed tunnels of the Metro with several semi-open world areas outside of Moscow, filled with scripted events, optional stuff to find, and even some side tasks. While this can take away some of the trademark creepy Metro atmosphere, Exodus makes up for this with cleverly designed environments and enemies. From sandstorms obstructing your vision in the desert, to forested areas where you can be attacked from any side, the game has plenty of ways of making you feel trapped and on edge, even when out in the open. What's more important, it gains an edge in pure wonder, as you just don't know what you'll expect while exploring, and Exodus does a great job of consistently putting something surprising and fresh in front of you. Just don't get me started on the humanimals, Fuglies, that always seem to get the drop on me with their ambush tactics. And then there's the bear. The bear. The gameplay is further elevated by the huge amount of weapon upgrade parts you can find and the ability to swap those parts on the fly, in real time. Ultimately, Exodus has the most refined gameplay of the 3 games, and it's also the longest one by a large margin. It's clearly the best one out of the 3 and a step forward for the series. If you're looking to play only one of the titles, this is the one I recommend. However, for the ultimate Metro experience, I advise getting the Steam bundle with all the 3 games, as they are all great and are best experienced together. Resident Evil Village is one of the best looking, but also one of the most resource-hungry games available for Mac today. This is the latest installment in the long-running Resident Evil series, a series of action games about killing zombies and other monstrosities that are the result of bio-experiments gone wrong. We should point out here that Village is a direct sequel to Resident Evil 7, but that's kind of weird because that game isn't on Mac. Since the story isn't strong in either game, your experience won't be affected too much if you haven't played the previous entry, but I still recommend at least watching some YouTube explanation videos to get a general idea of what's going on. When compared to its predecessor, Resident Evil 7, Village clearly leans harder into the action aspect of the gameplay with a satisfying, meaty first-person gunplay, where all the weapons have great visual feedback and sound effects. At the same time, in comparison, the survival mechanics and pure horror elements of the game are slightly toned down. But make no mistake, you'll still be required to carefully manage your resources and craft items needed for your survival, and there will be some scary moments. Those exact survival and resource management mechanics are what elevates the action by adding a nail-biting layer of tension to each hostile encounter. Your ammo is scarce, and your enemies are fast and tough, so you better make those bullets count because every missed shot gets you closer to becoming werewolf dinner. Play by being smart and efficient, have the courage to explore off the beaten path, and the game will reward you with better weapons, equipment, and upgrades, turning you into a monster slaying machine. It also helps that the combat sequences are paced really well. You'll never go for too long without having to fight for your life, which makes you appreciate the quiet exploration sections that much more. Whether focusing more on the action is a good change entirely depends on personal preference, but it can't be denied. As a whole, Resident Evil Village is a solid game and a worthy continuation of the series. Hope you enjoyed our list. We also have a nice selection of upcoming games for you in our previous videos. Check them out if you want to see what's on the horizon for this year. Thanks for watching.